Hello, everyone. Welcome to Conversations with Sekani, a podcast for people in their 20s who are trying to figure out life and not get lost along the way. Today's guest is Jean Kropper, founder of Meditative Drawing and an internationally published author whose books whose books have sold more than 30,000 copies. After navigating her own journey through trauma and PTSD, Jean spent years researching healing, mindfulness, and creativity, eventually creating a simple yet powerful practice that combines drawing, breathwork, and mindfulness to help people find peace and resilience. For over 25 years, she has taught creative workshops around the United States, Canada, and Australia, helping people rediscover joy and emotional well being. Jean, welcome to Conversations with Sekani. It's a pleasure to have you on.
I'm delighted to be here. Thank you.
All right. So yes, Jane, can you take us back to, when you were much more younger, right? Your
Yes.
20s, basically. So, what season of your life were you in, and what were you hoping your future would look like?
Uh, my family really valued education, and it was kind of assumed that you paid attention in high school and that you had to go to university. It was even my grandmothers went to university, which is very unusual. I was living in the United States, and I wanted to be a scientist and discover something amazing. And I also loved art. So those were two things. And I started off university as a double major in physics and fine art. And uh, yeah, so I suppose that was quite unusual. And that was in the 80s, 1980s. And then there weren't a lot of women in the physical sciences. So I was kind of treated as a freak at university in my physics class and calculus class and chemistry class and I did fine academically, but it was just quite lonely. And after 2 years, I dropped the physics because it was just hard. And so I champion women in science whenever I can because I want to make it easier for women after me. But that's sort of how I ended up in the creative field. But I always could do the math and science, but it was just the world wasn't ready for me, at least in the United States, to do that.
Hmm. Wow. All right. So, you mentioned some things, some challenges you faced, right? But, were there any fears, insecurities, or should I say pressure that you
Mhm.
struggled with that, people around you may not have seen?
Yeah, and it was interesting because my parents were very supportive of me working in science. My dad was an engineer, my grandfathers were engineers, and since I did well in school, he wanted me to be an engineer. So physics was sort of, the thing I liked that was close to that. But my father didn't really understand that the world treats women differently at work than men, and that's eased, but in some places it hasn't. So yeah, I suppose that was one thing. I ended up going into advertising and then graphic design because they were sort of commercial versions of doing art. And I loved the creative work, but I didn't
Mm.
have a lot of confidence and I wasn't good at selling myself. So I found it quite hard to get jobs, but I did fine when I got there. And I had a couple employers say, "Oh, you're much more capable than I realized when I hired you." And I thought, "Oh, that's a bit puzzling because I'm capable." But I realized I wasn't good at, sort of bragging or talking about what I did. Um,
Mm.
yeah, so that I guess that made it harder to get hired. So confidence makes a big difference, and I think there are many men who get hired because they're confident and talk about what they're doing well. Often women are more cautious about espousing how wonderful they are and how capable they are. And I guess I think we need to find a balance there because it is important that women get noticed for what they are capable of. And that would help you move forward. I in graphic design in the 1990s when I was just 29, 30. I was newly married, moved to Australia. I had three employers go bankrupt because
mm,
technology changed and suddenly the whole industry collapsed because desktop publishing came in and all the electronic um, publishing. And I guess it's important to know with the world changing so much and technology changing so much, there will be times in a career when suddenly everything changes. And we have to learn to deal with that somehow. And I didn't know how to deal with it. And I wished I'd just stopped and just mourned for a couple of weeks and just sort of allowed myself to be in shock and take time to figure what's next because yeah, I mean just like right now we've got AI coming in, so a lot of jobs are changing because of that. And
mm,
I think we need to learn to pause and acknowledge the shock of changes in our lives and ask people around us for help and support and find people to talk about, okay, well, the plan A I had just isn't working anymore. I did everything right, but it's collapsed. What do I do next? And have a real think about what that would be. And I mean, I'm quite happy where I ended up, but it could have been an easier journey if I'd had a bit more time and a bit more support for just figuring out what was next in that time.
Wow. All right. So first of all, you mentioned confidence, right? It's actually really important. And
Mm,
Ooh, like you said, confidence, right? And there's this thing that people usually say. There's the way you present yourself. People just assume you know what you're doing, right? Even though you don't know what you're doing. And then,
yes.
I mean, there could be two people in the room. There's one who is really confident and might not really be good at the job. And there would be someone else who is really good, but he or she is not confident enough. People would actually pick the person that's confident over the one that isn't,
Yep.
right?
Yep.
So I think, like you said, confidence is a really important too, right? And then you also mentioned, there are lots of changes, right? A change could, happen in somebody's life. Is important, right, to, dance with the change, basically. As it
Yes.
comes, accept it, right? Acceptance first. You could, feel down maybe a couple of weeks, but it's important to
Mm,
get up immediately, right? I mean,
yes.
just get up. Don't stay down for too long. I think that is
Yes.
the real, like from
Yes.
your experience, I think that will be my takeaway, right?
Yes.
Wow.
Yeah. Yeah.
Mm,
Yeah.
wow.
I did go on and from that point, I started doing artwork and selling through
Mm,
art galleries. And then I started teaching workshops, and quite honestly, neither of those made much money. So, I
mm,
wished I'd had a bit more time to think or a bit more advice. And I might have gone to teach in an art school or some more formal where I had a regular salary. And then, yeah, I did start writing for magazines. I wrote how to craft articles, how to make handmade paper, how to make a hand-bound book, how to make some greeting cards, and that sort of combined my graphic design ability because I could art direct the photo shoots and I knew how to deal with magazines and how to write instructions. And yeah, and then I had an art exhibition and a publisher came and offered me a book contract. So
mm,
they saw my artwork and they saw that I knew how to write about the artwork. And so
mm,
that was a big break.
mm,
And then yeah, that led to my writing two books that were published in Australia and then a third that was published in the US. So,
mm,
I did make progress, but yeah, I wished I'd had more confidence. So it is important to sit down once in a while, and even if there are bad times or some things have gone wrong or they haven't turned out the way you
mm,
thought, it's important to name the things that you did that were courageous and
mm,
name the things that you did that were successful. And they aren't necessarily the same things,
mm,
but to acknowledge the good stuff so that you can have confidence from that to move on to whatever you want to do next.
mm. Wow. All right. So yes, thank you, Jane. And I would like to say I'm learning right from your experience. And thank you for sharing your wonderful story with us today, actually. So
Yes.
yes, like you said, you got your big break, right? Your
Yes.
books and all, which I think is really, really good, honestly. And before we get to your book, I want us to talk about, your journey, right? And what you do today, basically.
Yes.
So uh years later, you found yourself navigating PTSD. Hmm.
Yes.
So, what was that season like for you emotionally?
It was very difficult. I had
Mm,
traveled around the world when I was 25 and 26 because I didn't know what to do after, with when I was in the middle of graphic design and advertising. And I ended up meeting an Australian man and marrying him and migrating to Australia. Uh, and he had quite a dysfunctional family, which he hid. And yeah, there were a lot of problems in his family. There was alcoholism, there was violence, there
mm,
was incest, there was verbal abuse. But he was smart and kind and hardworking and honest. And so there were a lot of good things about him, but all the other family stuff caught up with him. We were together for 19 years and he struggled with depression and then became an alcoholic. And because of the chaos that he caused at home, my son and I had to move out. And then I was a single mom in Australia. And I didn't have any family here and was trying to raise my child halfway around the world from my family in the middle of a very difficult time. My son and I had insomnia. Uh, we had flashbacks on bad things that had happened. Uh,
mm,
I found it hard to concentrate. Uh, I was very anxious and it was a really, really difficult time. I tried to include my husband in his, our son's life, and that didn't work because he was erratic and drinking, and I never quite knew when he'd be there and when he wouldn't, so I couldn't depend on anything. Um, yeah, so it was a very hard time, and just the chaos he created in our lives made it very hard for me to move forward and to have a regular work life. Um, and yeah, eventually I just sort of hit a wall and I was just exhausted because I was having trouble sleeping and I just couldn't depend on anything with him and had still been trying to include him in our lives. And later I realized that was basically it was a mistake because he didn't know how to be a father and he was thrashing around, struggling with his own stuff. And my son and I really needed to just build our own life separate from him. But uh, yeah, that's a big thing to be alone in the world with a child and go on. Um, yeah, so that was sort of the turning point.
mm. Wow. Oh, all right then. First of all, I want to say I'm really sorry for, what you went through, right? And looking at the positive side of, what you went through. I mean, it has contributed to who you are today, and now you're
Yeah.
helping people, right? Which is really, really amazing, honestly. So yes, was there a moment you realized that, healing wasn't all about pushing through, right? But it was, learning new ways to take care of yourself.
Yes, you're absolutely right about new ways to take care of yourself because
Mm,
PTSD isn't something that Western medicine can change. And
mm,
so I had a friend who sort of said, "Hey, I think you're struggling here. Something's wrong." And she knew what PTSD was, and I was like, okay. So Western medicine can't treat PTSD. What do I do next? Who are the kind of healers, or what is the healing process to heal from this? And so I knew I needed to explore new places, which was sort of like, okay, all right, I'm not sure how to go about this. And so for me, it was, uh, um, well, I just decided I had to heal because I wanted to be there for my son and I wanted a better life. I didn't want to stay a mess. And I did do acupuncture, craniosacral therapy, trauma release exercises, and also just making art. And I realized that in just playing around with art, doodling and drawing, and not trying to do anything serious, but just learning to play with color and lines was something I could do that it engaged my brain, and I would, be moving my hand, and it would bring me back to the present instead of all the chaos that was in my head. And it was something that I could do myself, with no money, to get out of the anxiety and the worry and all the stuff that was going on in my head. And by focusing on something simple like the drawing, I could have a break, give my mind a break from all the busyness in my head. And then that would allow my nervous system to calm down. And then my mind would calm down after that. So it was a way I could take back control of my whole nervous system. And I realize healing's actually been used for thousands of years as a healing process. Doing creativity has been a healing process for many years in many cultures. And I really wanted to give people practical tools for emotional well-being, to heal from trauma, to heal from stress, and to find ways to create a more peaceful and fulfilling life. So I learned about mindfulness, which is basically paying attention, being absolutely present, uh, and learned about breath work, some basic breath work exercises. And in the workshop that I've developed, which is for 30 days, and it's an online workshop, so you can do it from anywhere in the world and night or day. And I wanted to include really practical exercises so that people could take back control of their own mental well-being, and then combine that with creativity so that instead of mental health being sort of a chore or, really confronting, like going to a therapist, that it could be joyful, that it could be fun, and that it could be something you did in a group with an energy around you, and that you'd learn the practical skills like breath work and grounding exercises that would just make daily life a lot easier.
Mm. Wow. So, like you said, breath work and creativity, right? So, for let's say for someone who is overwhelmed, right, or carrying emotional pain, why do simple practices like, let me say, breath work and art, why does it matter so much?
Uh, well, I think there were a lot of years where life was fine for me, so I didn't
Mm,
need them. But sometimes life is hard, and
mm,
things happen, and the world changes. And mental health really is something that you have to do, like taking care of your body and going to the gym or taking a walk, getting exercise. You really need to do things to take care of your mental health. And
mm,
in the last few years, I've talked to a lot of people who are successful in different areas, and I realized all of them did things actively to take care of their mental health. It wasn't just something that they were fine. It was something they had to work on. And yeah, once I realized that, it was like, oh, okay, there's nothing wrong with me. It's simply that we need to learn what those practices are to take care of ourselves. And then you have to do them. I mean, it's like eating vegetables. You have to do that to take care of your nutritional health. And so, yeah, you have to do things to take care of your mental health. And I realized I wanted to learn what some of those practical things were.
mm. All right. Wow. Okay. So, Jane, another thing is, you created meditative drawing from your own experiences. So, what has surprised you most about, the people that you've helped?
Uh, it's been a huge variety. There's
Mm,
been veterans who had tremors, their hands would shake.
mm,
Uh, I've and after an hour session, she found her, at least for that time, her hands stopped shaking. I've
mm,
worked with children and teenagers who had arthritis, who are dealing with pain and the stress of that as young people, and worked with them to draw out what their anxiety and pain looked like. And I've worked with small business owners. Um, and I guess it's been really heartening to see how these practical skills could help very different people in very different places. Um, and that many people struggle with mental health. One time I had some 30-year Army veterans from the United States reach out to me. They wanted to know a bit more about what I was doing. And I was like, oh my goodness, what would I have in common with them? What will they think of me as a, very independent feminist woman? And within 15 minutes, we were just talking about mental health and symptoms and how we handled them. And we had a amazing conversation. And I realized that everyone has to deal with mental health, and it's something that can connect us. Uh, so yeah, I guess I realized that we as people around the world have common problems, and being able to share that, it gives meaning to the struggles that I went through, and that I can take learnings from the pain I went through and help others makes it, I don't know if I want to say worthwhile, but it
mm,
gives meaning to the things that I had to deal with.
mm. All right. Wow. So, I'll move to say my story personally, right? I
Yes.
I do highly recommend drawing, right? Because it
Yep.
has, yeah, because personally, anytime I feel, overwhelmed, drawing just helps it brings so much calm, right? It's
Mm,
almost like while you're drawing, you're releasing those emotions, like those emotions are going, and then you feel calm immediately. So I do
mm.
highly recommend drawing. And another thing that I think works is journaling too. Right. So, wow.
Yeah,
Okay.
I mean, I've been surprised too to find that there are studies that actually prove exactly what you're saying.
Mhm.
The US National Library of Medicine did a comprehensive analysis of 37 psychological studies that
Mm,
showed 45 minutes of art making decreased the levels of the stress hormone cortisol in 75% of the participants. And of all those,
wow.
the 75%, they had an 81.1% decrease in cortisol
Mm.
level. So it has been scientifically proven exactly what you're saying, that art making does calm people down. And
Exactly.
yeah, there's also a scientist, Dr. Daisy Fancourt in
Mm,
the UK, and she found that there's a 30% decrease in depression and anxiety for people who
mm,
engage in the arts. And now doctors in the UK can prescribe people to do the
mm,
arts. As instead of giving them drugs, they'll say, "Hey, go do some art or some craft to help your depression." And I think that's wonderful that we're giving people other choices besides medication.
mm. Right. Wow. Whew. Okay. So, yes. And like you said, giving people other choices, besides medication. And I actually do recommend it, right? Just try art, try journaling. Because I spoke with a whole lot of guests and they say, when I started journaling, I felt better. I was like, hmm. Honestly, at first, I thought they were just exaggerating, right? Until I
Yes,
tried it
yeah,
out myself. I mean, wow. I got a drawing book, right? So
yes,
whenever I feel tense, I just, draw. And it's almost like you forget whatever it is you're going through, and your brain just focuses on what you're drawing, right? So it just
Yes,
brings so much calm and
yes.
peace, right? So yeah, I highly recommend, honestly. So thank you, Jane,
Yeah,
for what you're
yeah,
doing, actually.
yeah. And also with the breath work that I do, I combine it with
Mm,
drawing
mm,
because a lot of times with breath work, I find if I do it alone, my brain starts drifting off and keep thinking about things. But when I
mm,
combine it with drawing, I do a
mm.
square breathing exercise with drawing. It's much
Mm.
more effective because it keeps your brain engaged and your
Wow.
brain doesn't drift off. So there are a lot of
Mm,
simple techniques in the meditative drawing workshop that really help you take control of your mental health again, but in a way that's enjoyable. And Yeah, so I really want to help other people to
mm,
cut back on churning thoughts, poor sleep, and having trouble concentrating, and give them back that sense of control and help others to heal faster than I did.
Wow. All right. So, like you said, drawing and fused with breath work, right? I feel like it will do an amazing job, right? And then you said there are some, meditative drawing techniques. So, can you share a little bit of, some techniques with us? Let me see which one I could steal and start,
Sure,
using.
sure. One of them I'd like to share. It's called the disappearing technique, and
Mm,
if you've got a pain or you're feeling unwell, or if you've got a really strong emotion like anger
mm,
or fear, and so the first step of that is is just tuning inward and noticing what's going on for you. So with the disappearing technique, it's naming the emotion or the pain, uh, and just in saying, I am angry or I am afraid,
mm,
can reduce, and pausing and noticing that can reduce the intensity of that emotion by 50%. So first of all, just pausing and naming it instead of avoiding the emotion or the feeling is putting your attention on it, and
mm,
then rate it out of 10. So let's say it was anxiety. You could say, I feel anxiety. It's 7 out of 10. And then notice the body and scan the body and notice where in the body you feel that. And this might be a new process and it might seem a bit odd at first, but
mm,
usually we feel emotions in the body because emotions are energy in motion.
mm,
So you might feel anxiety in a tense jaw. It might be that your stomach is all clenched. Uh, it might be that you've got tense shoulders, but notice where in your body you feel the emotion and just focus on it and sit with it. And then take several breaths in through your nose and out through your nose, just very slowly breathing in and very slowly breathing out. And breathing in through your nose helps calm the body, just that in itself. And breathing slowly in through the nose and breathing out through the mouth. And noticing the feel of the air going in and out. And then check the emotion or the pain, whatever's going on, again, and sort of say, okay, what's the anxiety like now? What is it out of 10? And you might find that it's 5 or 6 out of 10 instead of 7. And then scan the body again and see where you feel it, because after you do the breathing, it may move or change or dissipate. And if you do a few rounds of that where you check in and then you slowly take several breaths in through the nose and slowly take breaths out through the mouth, then after maybe, it might be 4 or 5 rounds, depending how strong your feeling is, you may find that the emotion reduces significantly and that you're a lot more comfortable. Because when we give emotions attention, most of the time they change significantly or move or dissipate within a couple minutes. It's usually when we try to avoid them that we end up carrying those emotions around for a long time. So that's the disappearing technique.
Hmm. Wow. Okay. The disappearing technique. And I like what you said just now. When you avoid those emotions, they don't go away. So you actually need to give the emotions attention, right? Understand that emotion. And part of the disappearing technique, like you said, first of all, name your emotion. And then secondly, you rate it out of 10. Then we
Yep.
move to, notice where you feel the emotions, and then take small, slow breaths, breathe in, breathe out. And when you're done, you check your emotions again, and then you take slow breaths. It just helps regulate your nervous system. Wow.
Mm.
Good. All right. So thank you, Jean. I'm so excited because I feel like I've just learned a very amazing one that I'm going to be practicing more often, actually. All
Yes, yeah.
right.
I mean, I actually learned that maybe 20 years ago, but it still
Wow.
works. And particularly if,
Mm,
something strong comes up and you're just
mm,
in a real panic, or you've got a terrible headache. It also works for
mm,
that. Focusing on it and then breathing very gently in and breathing very gently out, and then scanning yourself again. So yeah, yeah, it's a very good
mm.
technique.
All right. Well, you said it works for strong emotions. There are some kind of emotions that I mean, they're really strong, right? It feels so overwhelming when it comes, right? Almost like, should I say, if I'm to name it, I would say fear, right? So it's
Mm.
really, really strong. So do you think this technique would work for such emotion?
Yes, yes, it does.
Hmm.
Yeah, I have been in that situation, and yes, you sit with it and name it and scan the body and see where it is and rate how strong it is out of 10, and slowly breathe in and slowly breathe out and slowly breathe in and slowly breathe out, and just sit with it for a few minutes, the breathing, and then scan again, and then do the breathing again, and then scan again and do the breathing again. And it might take 5 rounds, and but yes, it uh, I find it changes, and it might go from 8 down to a 4, and then you can go on with your day. You can function when it's down at 4 rather than if it's 7 or 8.
Hmm. Wow. All right. Good. Okay. So yes, thank you, Jen. This has been absolutely amazing, I would say. And I want us to talk about the future, right? Looking ahead, what do you think, excites you the most about this chapter of your life?
Uh, I'm just about to turn 66, actually.
Wow.
So it is a different time of life than when I was 25. I guess I feel like I've got a lot more tools and I've got a lot more perspective. So when things go bad, it doesn't feel as catastrophic. I know there can be change, and uh, I know there could be new adventures, and I know I can learn new skills to handle it. I guess I've got a circle of lovely friends around me, and I like the city that I'm living in. And I meet some amazing people when I'm teaching, and I really enjoy that. And I also have a lot of respect for the students that come to my workshop, because it takes courage to learn something new. And meeting people from all around the world is a wonderful adventure. I've lived in different places, and I like learning from other people. So teaching is a way of meeting many people. Um, and yeah, when I teach in the workshop, it's inspiring to see the people who show up.
Wow. Oh, all right. So yes, thank you, Jane. And finally, I want you to, talk to someone out there, specifically younger adults. Because, like you said, the way you
Mm,
feel the emotions now, it's way different from when you were much more younger, right? So you felt it
yes.
well when you were. So, that means there are a whole lot of us that still feel it really well now that we are young, right? So would you have any advice for those of us in our 20s who, feel constantly feel pressured or overwhelmed to have everything, figured out, right? Or we are currently going through some I don't want to say traumatic experience, but there are people out there actually going through traumatic experiences, right? So what
Mm.
advice would you have for someone out there that really needs to know, more about life and how to navigate our emotions, basically?
I'd say trust yourself because
Mm,
usually we have a sense that something's wrong. We just don't know what to do next. So
mm,
instead of dismissing it, and you might be in a situation where there are different people around you and their experience is different, or what has been done to them or what has happened to them is different. So I'd say trust yourself and find people who support you to talk things through to make good decisions. And yeah, and be willing to learn new skills because uh, life changes and the world changes and technology changes, the workplace changes. So you do have to keep learning new skills. I mean, I'm running an online business uh, in my 60s, and I've learned how to shoot video and learned how to edit video, and those were skills I didn't want to do at first, but they've been gateways to all sorts of wonderful new things. So yeah, trust yourself. Find people who support you. Find people to discuss things with and ask questions and keep learning to move with whatever's coming up in front of you. Yeah.
wow. All right. Okay. So you said trust your instincts and, keep learning, right? The world is constantly evolving and we also need to evolve alongside the world. So yes, thank you, Jen. And it brings me to the final segment of my podcast. I call it the rapid fire segment. You could either
Yes.
answer with a word or a phrase starting now.
Okay.
So would you prefer coffee or tea?
Coffee when I'm tired and tea otherwise. Yeah.
All right. So morning person or night owl?
Say that again.
Okay. So are you a morning person or a night owl?
Morning. Morning.
Hmm. Okay, all right. So, what is a book that changed your life?
Oh, that's interesting. Oh, what was it called? Midnight Library by Matt Haig. It was
Mm,
actually a really amazing book about a woman who was struggling with depression and she was looking back in her life and wondering if she'd made the right choices. And the Midnight Library it's a fiction book, but she mentally gets to go back to those decisions and see what life would have been like if she'd made a different decision. And yeah, it's I loved it because sometimes I look back and I think, should I have done that? Should I have done that? Should I have taken that job? Should I, and it was a really good way of uh, just answering that.
mm. Wow, Midnight Library. Wow. Okay. All right. So, what is one thing you do to, find peace when life gets stressful?
I just take a walk in the morning, get some sunshine, get outside, listen to the birds, and yeah, just reconnect with the world and remember, even if I'm having a bit of a crisis, that the world's just going on and there's a lot of beauty out there.
Well, all right. And finally, what is one word that describes this season of your life?
Mm. Oh, evolving, evolving.
All right, evolving. So yes,
Yeah.
thank you, Jen. I would say this has been, absolutely amazing. Thank you for, sharing your story and your wisdom with us today. And before we wrap up, where can, listeners get to learn more about you and also connect with you?
Yes, on Facebook, there's the Meditative Drawing page, and I'd love to see people there. And on Instagram, it's Meditative Drawing Workshop. And I'm giving away a lot of ebooks and checklists and Google Docs and posters there right now. So that could be a lot of help for people. So if you go to either of those pages, I'm giving away a 12-point self-care checklist, 7 healthy ways to release rage, PTSD symptom checklist, top tips for improving sleep. So a lot of things information that I'm giving away to help people. Also, I've got a website, meditativedrawing.com. And lastly, on LinkedIn, I'm there under my name, which is Jean Kropper, which is Kropper. And I'd be very glad to hear from people and yeah, look forward to seeing them on the workshop.
All right. Well, okay. So thank you, Jane. And I'm gonna put the link in the show notes so it's easily accessible for listeners. Right. And yes, to my listeners, I would say thanks for tuning in to Conversations with Sekani. If this episode sparked something in you, just as it did in me, make sure to share to someone who you think might need this, and also subscribe so you don't miss out on new episodes. Once again, thank you, Jane, and do have a wonderful day ahead of you.
Thank you, Sekani. It was really
All right.
enjoyable. Take
You're
care. Bye.
welcome. Take care. All right.